Hello, everyone. Have you ever felt the forest breathe around you as the sun sets? Have you ever heard a distant lullaby carried on a whispering wind, only to realize no one is singing? What would you do if every crackling twig and flickering shadow seemed to follow your every move? Before we begin, a quick note. I'm on a mission to reach 500 subscribers, and subscribing is completely free. If you love diving into heart-pounding tales just like this one, hit that subscribe button now and join our Nightmare and Fear family. Your support means everything. I never believed in curses, at least, not until that weekend. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how Black Hollow Camp changed my life forever. It started innocently enough. My friends, Mark, Lena, and Josh, found an old brochure at a thrift shop, a postcard, perfect camp nestled beside a glassy lake, ringed by pines so tall they scraped the sky. Black Hollow, it was called, promising untouched wilderness, and stories waiting to be told. We booked the last cabin, thinking we'd get a deal. But when we arrived, the place felt suspended in time. The caretaker, a gaunt man with sunken cheeks, handed over the keys without a word. His eyes never left ours, and when we asked about local legends, he only shook his thin shoulders and pointed down the overgrown path. No smile. No greeting. That first evening, we set up around a crackling fire pit, lanterns dangling like fireflies. The sun dipped behind the pines, leaving a bruise of purple across the lake. Laughter felt hollow. There was something in the air, like a warning we couldn't decipher. Night fell fast. As we roasted hot dogs, I noticed Lena staring into the woods, her marshmallow forgotten. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I strained my ears. At first, nothing. Then, faint at the edge of hearing, a distant humming. A child's lullaby, looping over and over, so soft I wasn't sure it was real. "Probably a radio from another camper," Mark said, but his voice quivered. We walked toward the sound. The humming grew clearer, but every time we stepped closer, it slipped away, always just beyond reach. The forest around us seemed to lean in, branches swaying though the air was still. At the water's edge, the lullaby vanished entirely. In its place was a single blue balloon, bobbing on the lake's surface, string trailing beneath the mirror-smooth water. No child. No camp counselor. Just that balloon, gently drifting as if waiting for company. Back at the cabin, Josh discovered something wedged beneath the floorboards, a tattered notebook bound in cracked leather. Inside, the pages were brittle with age, filled with frantic scrawl. "They come when the moon is new. We whispered secrets to keep them away, but the forest listens. They want to play." Each entry grew shorter and more desperate. The last one read, "If you find this, leave. Don't look back." I felt a chill as we read it by lantern light. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes. Lena slammed the book shut. "Let's just sleep it off," she said, her voice shaking. Sleep didn't come. At 2:14 a.m., Jenna thought she heard her name, like a breathy echo, calling from the darkness. We all woke, hearts hammering. "Did you hear that?" Josh asked, clutching his blanket. Before anyone could answer, a heavy thump shook the cabin floor. Then another. It came from the attic above, slow, deliberate footsteps. We froze. Mark's phone light trembled as he aimed it at the ceiling hatch. Nothing. The steps stopped. Moments later, a soft giggle echoed above us, childlike, innocent, but somehow wrong. It made the hairs on my arms stand on end. We bolted outside and ran into the night, leaving everything behind. Lanterns, backpacks, even our shoes. The forest swallowed us whole, branches clawing at our clothes as if dragging us back. We stumbled into a clearing and found ourselves at the lake again. The water was glassy, reflecting the new moon like a black hole. In the center floated dozens of balloons, red, blue, yellow, all drifting in a perfect circle. In the middle of that circle sat a small wooden stool, painted white and polished smooth. On it sat an old porcelain doll, its eyes a glossy, unblinking black. Something drew me forward. I didn't know why I obeyed, but my feet moved on their own. The others called my name, but their voices felt miles away. When I reached the stool, the doll's lips curved into a smile. My reflection in the water shimmered, and behind it I saw her. A little girl in a white dress, hair slicked back with water, standing waist-deep behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked down, the doll's head had turned to face me. That's when the lake rippled, and dozens of pale faces emerged from the water, children with hollow eyes, mouths stretched in silent screams. I screamed. Everything went black. I woke on the cabin floor at sunrise, drenched in cold sweat. The others were gone, vanished without a trace. Outside, the balloons had deflated into pale petals floating on the grass. I packed my things with shaking hands and raced to my car. On the seat lay the leather notebook, open to the final page. In big, childlike letters, someone had written, "Thank you for playing." I drove away without looking back. They say Black Hollow Camp closed not long after that weekend. No one goes there now. Sometimes, at midnight, I still hear a lullaby on the wind. And I swear, if I listen closely, I can make out a soft voice calling, "Come play with us." Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to subscribe. It's free, and with your help we can hit that 500 subscriber milestone. Until next time, keep your lantern close, watch the shadows, and remember, some places were never meant to be found. Have you ever wondered what truly lurks in the woods when the sun sets and the fire dies? Have you ever felt like something was watching you, something you couldn't see, but could feel? Tonight, I'm taking you deep into a forgotten forest, to a camp where fear was more real than the cold night air. Before we dive into this chilling true story, don't forget, subscribing is completely free, and it helps me reach my goal of 500 amazing horror lovers like you. So, if you enjoy losing sleep over terrifying tales, hit that subscribe button and join our growing nightmare family. Now, are you ready to enter the woods with me? I had always loved camping. The silence of the forest, the crackling of the fire, the whisper of the trees in the wind, it all felt like an escape from reality. But there was one night, just one, that made me swear I would never set foot in the woods again. This is that night. It was late October when my friends, Jason, Lily, and I decided to camp in a place locals called the Forgotten Campground. It wasn't marked on any maps. People said it was once a busy site back in the 1970s, but after a string of disappearances, it was abandoned. Most people didn't even talk about it anymore. That should have been our first warning. We packed light, just tents, sleeping bags, food, and a small axe. The forest road that led there was barely more than a broken trail swallowed by undergrowth. By the time we reached the site, the sun was bleeding into the horizon, casting the world in an eerie red glow. The campground itself looked wrong. The fire pits were cracked and filled with blackened stones. Old wooden picnic tables, splintered and half-rotted, sat under towering trees like forgotten gravestones. And in the center, a circle of 7 stones, all marked with symbols none of us could recognize. Probably just some kids messing around. Jason laughed, setting up his tent near the stones. But Lily and I weren't so sure. There was a feeling here, thick and heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. That night, we built a fire as darkness swallowed the forest whole. We laughed, told stupid ghost stories, and tried to convince ourselves the campground's strange atmosphere was just our imagination. But sometime around midnight, the fire started to die down, and we began to hear them. Soft footsteps. Crunching leaves. From every direction. Jason grabbed the axe. Lily clutched my arm so tightly that her nails dug into my skin. We shone our flashlights into the trees, but the beams caught nothing but endless blackness. Still, the sounds grew louder. Closer. "It's just animals," Jason said again, but his voice shook. We agreed to pile more wood on the fire and stay awake the rest of the night. Sleep felt dangerous. The symbols. At around 2:13 a.m., I remember looking at my watch. Jason decided to investigate the stone circle. "Maybe it's some kind of local game," he joked weakly. As he stepped closer, Lily and I noticed something horrifying. The stones were bleeding. Dark, viscous liquid oozed from the engraved symbols, dripping onto the dry ground. The moment Jason touched one, a deep howl ripped through the forest. Not animal, not human, but something in between. The fire roared up high into the air, then snapped out completely, plunging us into suffocating darkness. We screamed for Jason, but he was already running, straight into the woods. The chase. We didn't think. We just followed. Branches clawed at our faces. Thorns ripped our clothes. The night around us pulsed with an invisible, suffocating presence. Somewhere ahead, Jason's flashlight flickered, then went out. We called his name. No answer. Instead, from the darkness came a low, guttural growl, followed by heavy, dragging footsteps moving towards us. We turned and ran. The cabin. After what felt like hours, we stumbled upon it, an old ranger's cabin, half collapsed and covered in moss. We forced the door open and barricaded ourselves inside. The smell of mold and rot filled the air. Through the cracked windows, we could see shapes moving among the trees, tall, skeletal figures, their limbs too long, their heads tilting unnaturally. They circled the cabin, waiting. I whispered to Lily not to make a sound. We sat there in total darkness, hearts hammering so loud I was sure they could hear. And then, we heard a voice. Jason's voice. "Guys, let me in, it's cold." But something was wrong. The voice was flat. Emotionless. Like someone was pretending to be Jason. Lily gripped my hand and shook her head violently. "Guys, I'm hurt, please." The doorknob rattled. The window creaked. I don't know where I found the courage, but I screamed at whatever it was. "You're not Jason!" The rattling stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. And then, a soft, horrible giggle from right outside the door. The escape. Morning light eventually bled through the broken windows. The creatures, whatever they were, vanished with the sun. We ran. We never found Jason. Search parties combed the woods for weeks. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a bone. When the police asked us what happened, we told them we got lost. We didn't dare tell the truth. Who would believe it? Some places are abandoned for a reason. Some things should stay forgotten. The next time you feel watched in the woods, remember, not everything that calls your name is truly your friend. If you enjoyed this terrifying journey, please hit that like button and subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps me grow this nightmare community. Thank you for walking through the darkness with me. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can. Have you ever felt the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when the forest falls into an unnatural silence? Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the crackle of the campfire when no one else is watching? What would you do if you heard your own name whispered through the pines, and there was no one there to answer? If you're new here, I'm Dylan, and I share original, spine-chilling campfire horror stories every week. We're on a mission to reach 500 subscribers, and subscribing is completely free, so if you don't want to miss any of these terrifying tales, hit that subscribe button now, and let's dive in. I'd been looking forward to this weekend getaway at Pine Hollow Camp for weeks. An isolated stretch of land tucked 5 miles off the main road, ringed by towering pines and overlooked by a placid, mirror-like lake. The late afternoon sun matted the forest floor in gold as I hauled my duffel bag toward Cabin 13, rumored among locals to be the oldest building on the grounds. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and old cedar. The bunk beds groaned when I sat on the edge. Outside, the wind darkened the sky, racing through treetops like whispered warnings. I shrugged it off. Lone weekends were my way of resetting. Little did I know how quickly I would regret seeking solitude. That evening, I joined the small camp gathering around the communal fire pit. An elderly groundskeeper, gray beard dripping with kind eyes, leaned in to share the legend. He spoke of the Whisperer, an entity said to wander the woods after sundown, calling lost campers by name. Anyone who answered would vanish without a trace, their screams swallowed by the forest. I laughed it off, but others fell silent, glancing nervously into the dark tree-line. As the fire popped and embers arced skyward, I caught the tremor in their voices. Pine Hollow had secrets, and tonight, I was about to uncover one of them. Back in Cabin 13, I followed my usual routine: hot cocoa on the small stove, journal entries by flashlight, and double-checking the lock on the door. Outside, a lone owl called, a drawn-out hoo-hoo that felt almost human. At exactly 2:17 a.m., I awoke to the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing the wooden deck. Slow, deliberate. The floorboards groaned under a weight that shouldn't exist. I sat up, heart thudding, and strained to listen. Then, the faintest whisper, so low I thought the wind had carried it right into my ear. Dylan. My name. In the empty night. Too afraid to stay inside, I crept outside with my phone's flashlight. The beam swept across the deck railing, catching something dark hanging from a nail, a tattered scrap of weather-beaten fabric, like the remnant of an old camp flag. Underneath, scratched into the wood, were letters. Do not answer. My pulse raced. Goosebumps climbed my arms. I tucked the warning into my jacket pocket and followed the narrow path that led toward the main trails, convinced that if I got far enough, I'd outrun whatever was stalking me. The trees pressed in, their limbs like skeletal fingers. Every shadow seemed to shift. Then the voices started, soft at first, unintelligible murmurs drifting between the trunks. As I paused, the foliage around me seemed to exhale. Dylan, Dill, die! The words slithered through the night, coiling around my mind. I covered my ears, stumbling forward until I'd burst out of the woods and onto the shore of the lake. The water lay still, moonlight trembling along its surface. And there, halfway across the lake, a lantern bobbed on the water, no boat in sight. A solitary glow, enticing me to come closer. Despite every instinct screaming at me to retreat, I waded in. The cold bit at my knees. Each step sent ripples to the lantern, which bobbed just out of reach. My reflection blurred in the glass. Then I saw it. Behind the lantern's glow, a pale face, eyes black as tar, lips stretched in a silent scream. Help me! It mouthed. My voice caught. Was that my own voice rising in a whisper? Help you? The head jerked toward the forest. Behind it, Between two ancient pines, I saw a cluster of shapes, camper silhouettes, frozen. And at their center, a figure, taller than any human, cloak soaked through, tendrils of mist swirling at its feet. A thunderclap ripped through the sky. The lantern blinked out. I sprinted back up the shoreline, dripping and gasping. Branches clawed at my clothes, roots tripped me, but I didn't stop until the cabin's door slammed shut behind me. Inside, the scrap of fabric burned a memory in my hand. They'd left it on my door, a warning from whichever soul still lingered. At dawn, I packed my bag and left Pine Hollow Camp without looking back. I never found out what happened to the campers in the woods. Some say they're still out there, calling names in the darkness. I only know one thing for sure. The next time you hear your name whispered among the trees, do not answer. Thank you for joining me around the campfire tonight. If this tale sent a shiver down your spine, make sure you're part of our growing community. Remember, we're aiming for 500 subscribers, and subscribing is free. Tap that button, and I'll see you next time, if you dare. Have you ever thought about how many things could be watching you, just beyond the tree line? Have you ever heard a second set of footsteps when you're walking alone through the woods? Or, have you ever set up camp in a place where you were absolutely not welcome? I'm Dylan, and I create original horror stories to haunt your nights. We're so close to reaching 500 subscribers, and the best part is, subscribing is completely free. If you love getting lost in terrifying stories you can't hear anywhere else, hit that subscribe button now, and stay close to the fire. You'll need its light tonight. Because this story is different. This story happened to me. It started as a simple idea: find the most secluded camping spot we could before summer ended. I was with my two best friends, Tyler and Mason, and we prided ourselves on choosing the craziest, wildest locations. This time, Mason suggested Driftwood Ridge, a dense, misty woodland about 2 hours from town. The locals had warned us. Stay away from the ridge. People get turned around there. We laughed it off. Perfect place for an adventure, we thought. The trail was overgrown, the map outdated. Even our GPS showed nothing but a gray void. It felt like the forest was swallowing us whole. But we were too stubborn to turn back. We set up camp at the edge of a dried-up riverbed, hemmed in by cliffs and thick trees. The silence was heavy, like a thick, wet blanket pressing down on us. By sunset, the woods had gone unnaturally still. No crickets. No birds. As night fell, we sat around the fire, telling ghost stories and roasting marshmallows. Then we noticed. It wasn't our firelight casting shadows on the trees behind us. There were others. Dozens of faint, flickering silhouettes, swaying between the trunks. Too tall. Too thin. And they didn't move like people. We spun around, nothing there. But when we turned back, our fire had died down by half. We decided to call it a night. I crawled into my tent and zipped it tight. That's when I heard it, right under me. Faint tapping. Almost like fingers scratching. It grew louder. More desperate. I pressed my ear to the ground, and I swear to you, I heard a voice muffled by dirt. Let me out. I shot up, hard hammering. I thought maybe it was Mason or Tyler playing a prank. But when I unzipped the tent, their tents were empty. I grabbed my flashlight and called out. No answer. Only the trees, stretching on forever. As I stumbled toward the riverbed, I found Tyler's backpack shredded, like something had clawed through it. His boots were still standing upright, perfectly placed side by side, as if he'd simply evaporated. Further down, Mason's hat lay in the mud. But no footprints. Not even my own. Panic surged through me. I tried to run back to camp. But every direction led somewhere new. Paths twisted and shifted like the forest itself was alive. Then I saw them. Emerging from the mist. Shapes like people, but wrong. Skin stretched thin over splintered frames. No eyes. Just hollow sockets that seemed to bleed darkness. Their mouths were gaping holes, wide and yawning. They didn't walk, they glided. And when they opened their mouths wider, I heard my own voice crying for help. Dylan! 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 The trees bent toward me. The ground rippled. I was inside something. A mouth of the forest itself. Falling to my knees, I begged whatever force ruled this cursed place. Please! Let me go. Take something else. Take anything. The shadows paused. Then one pointed at the backpack I'd abandoned. My journal. It was as if the ridge demanded a memory, a part of me. I hurled the journal into the mist. The shadows melted into the ground. The trees relaxed. The air thinned. I sprinted without looking back, running toward the faintest hint of dawn in the sky. And somehow, I found the trailhead again. Alone. I reported Mason and Tyler missing. Search teams found no trace, not even their footprints. Just their boots, standing upright in the riverbed. Every now and then, when the wind howls just right, I swear I hear them calling. Trapped. Lost forever in the twisting gut of Driftwood Ridge. And sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I feel the soil under my bed shifting. Whispering. As if I left more behind than just a journal. If you ever find yourself deep in the woods, and you hear your own voice calling out to you, don't answer. Thanks for joining me on this terrifying journey. If you enjoyed this story and want more original horror like this, don't forget, subscribing is completely free, and it would mean the world to me as we aim for 500 subscribers. Stay curious. Stay safe. And remember, some forests should be left untouched. Have you ever felt the earth tremble beneath your feet when no storm is near? Have you ever seen your own reflection move on its own? Or heard a child's laughter echo across a still, moonlit lake, only to discover there is no one there? If you've ever wondered what hides beneath the silent waters of an abandoned campsite, you're in the right place. I'm Dylan, and I spin original horror stories from the darkest corners of the wild. We're so close to reaching 500 subscribers, and the best part is, subscribing is completely free. Smash that subscribe button now. And stay with me as we journey into tonight's tale. It began with a message in my inbox from an old friend, Mara. Dylan, forget every campsite you've ever heard of. There's a place called Silver Mirror Lake. They say you can see things in its waters that weren't ever there. Her words felt like a dare, and I couldn't resist. She sent coordinates, somewhere deep in the Whispering Pines National Forest, a 6-hour drive from the nearest gas station. I packed my recorder, extra batteries, and a flashlight with fresh bulbs. Mara's description came with a warning. The lake had been closed to the public after a series of disappearances 30 years ago. But what are rules for, if not to be broken? When I arrived at the trailhead, the forest was dead quiet, no birdsong, no rustle of squirrels. Just tall pines standing like sentinels. I followed the narrow path, marked only by faded flagging tape, deeper and deeper. 3 hours later, the trees opened onto a small clearing, an abandoned ranger station, half collapsed, its windows blackened by time. A rusted sign read, Silver Mirror Lake, no trespassing. I shrugged off the warning and continued down the slope. The undergrowth gave way to the lake's edge. The water lay so still it was like polished glass. The moonlight splintered across its surface, illuminating a dozen white buoys, no ropes attached, bobbing silently. I set up my tent on a high bank overlooking the water and built a small fire. As embers glowed, I noticed footprints pressed into the damp soil around the shoreline. Bare feet, three-toed imprints, too small to be a deer. They formed a perfect circle around the lake, then stopped at the water's edge. My recorder crackled with static. I leaned in and heard it, faint laughter, childlike, echoing softly. I scanned the darkness. Nothing. Parchment-thin pause. Testing, this is Dylan. Are you there? I spoke into the mic. Silence, for a heartbeat. Then a tiny voice whispered, Dylan, come play. I tried to sleep, but the laughter returned every 30 minutes. Sometimes it was just a giggle. Once I heard sobbing, soft, urgent. I unzipped the tent and shone my flashlight across the lake. There, on the far bank, a girl in a white dress, ankles submerged. Her hair was plastered to her face. She raised her head and stared straight at me. No movement, no blink. Then she slipped beneath the surface. I froze. When I blinked, she was gone. At dawn, I found her sandals on the shore and her dress draped over a fallen log. Next to them, scrawled in muddy water, "Find me." My heart pounded. I broadcast live on my channel, asking viewers if they were seeing this too. 500 comments scrolled by, people spooked, urging me to leave. But curiosity gripped me. I waded in, dragging my recorder underwater. The temperature dropped. My breath steamed in the beam's halo. At 6 feet down, I saw something glint, a small locket. Fingernails encircled it, a tiny handprint scratched into the metal. I surfaced gasping. In my mind I heard the girl's voice. "You found me." That night the laughter turned to pleading. "Help me, help us." I followed the voices into the trees. A thick fog curled around the trunks, and phosphorescent shapes drifted above the ground. Dozens of pale faces, their eyes dark hollows. They hovered, arms outstretched, mouths opening in silent screams. I stumbled into an uprooted tree. Its roots formed a natural arch like a doorway. Beyond it lay a hidden inlet, cordoned off by rotten wooden pilings. Inside, an old rowboat tied to a post. The boat's paint was chipped, but I recognized the name carved into its side. Avenue Maria. I climbed in, heart thundering. As I pushed away from shore, the faces glided closer. Their whispers rose to a howl. "Take us home." The water closed around me like a second skin. The girl in white appeared at the prow. She held the locket, dangling it over the side. I reached for it, and my own reflection in the water grinned at me with jagged teeth. I jerked back. The boat rocked violently. A hand shot from the water and grabbed my ankle. I spread up my calf. I kicked free, splashing back to dry land. The boat drifted away on its own, carrying ghostly passengers I could no longer see. I fled through the fog, guided only by the distant glow of my campfire. When I arrived, everything was as I'd left it, except the tent flap was open, and inside lay muddy footprints leading to my backpack. I threw my gear together and ran toward the ranger station. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, dusty bunk beds lined the walls and dozens of journals lay scattered on the floor, each one filled with frantic scrawls from missing campers. Every entry ended with the same phrase. "They saw me. They let me back." Behind the counter, scratched into the wood. "Don't trust your reflection." Lightning cracked overhead as the storm rolled in. I sprinted back to my car, retracing my steps through the pitch-black forest. My recorder captured low sobs and distant cries. By the time I burst into the rain, I felt them at my heels, whispers promising I wouldn't leave alone. I slammed the door shut and peeled out of the muddy lot. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of the boat gliding across the lake, its passengers pressed against the sides, eyes wide with silent terror. Now, whenever I pass a lake at dusk, I press my hand to the glass and ask silently, "Are you still there?" Sometimes my reflection doesn't mirror my action. Sometimes it smiles first. So if you're ever lured by a dying campfire or the promise of a hidden lake, remember this. Don't answer the laughter. Don't retrieve the lost locket. And especially, don't trust your reflection. Because what looks back at you might already be someone else. If the tale of Silver Mirror Lake sent a chill down your spine, make sure you subscribe. Remember, it's completely free, and we're so close to 500 subscribers. Tap that button now, and join our community of fearless listeners. I'll see you next time, if you dare.